The small town was quiet that afternoon, the kind of quiet that made every sound feel louder than it should. People gathered in the open yard behind the farmer's old barn, where he had decided to hold a small sale. Items were placed on wooden tables, old chairs, a broken clock, tools that had seen better days. Yet among all those things there was one sight that caught everyone's attention and sparked whispers through the crowd. It was not an object but a living creature. A German shepherd sat near a wooden post, tied with a rough rope. His fur was messy, his eyes sad and heavy as if he carried years of pain that nobody cared to see. He was thin, bones slightly visible under his coat, and his ears drooped instead of standing tall like a proud dog should. The farmer, a man who had too much work and too little patience, stood beside the dog. He called out loudly, $1 for this dog. That's it. Whoever wants him, take him away. I can't keep him anymore. His voice was sharp, as if the animal was nothing more than another broken tool he was eager to get rid of. People chuckled and shook their heads. $1? Who would pay even that for such a useless dog? A man muttered. Another woman whispered to her friend, he looks sick. Probably won't survive the winter. Laughter followed, and soon the dog became the subject of jokes instead of sympathy. Children pointed and giggled, while adults smirked and turned their attention to other things for sale. But not everyone was laughing. Standing a little behind the crowd was a small girl with bright eyes. She was no older than 10, her hair tied into 2 loose braids, her clothes simple but neat. She held her father's hand tightly as she stared at the German shepherd. While others saw weakness, she saw something different. To her, the dog was not broken. He was lonely. His eyes told her a story, one she felt in her heart. They spoke of hunger, of being left behind, of wanting someone to care. The girl tugged at her father's sleeve. Papa, she said softly, I want him. Her father looked down in surprise. The dog? He glanced at the animal, then at his daughter. Sweetheart, he's old and thin. We don't have money to take care of him. A dog like that will be hard work. But he's only $1, the girl argued, her voice shaking but firm. Please, Papa, no one else wants him. If we don't take him, he will be all alone. Her father sighed deeply. He was a kind man, but times were difficult. Money was tight and every coin mattered. He looked again at the dog, who was lying silently on the ground, his head resting on his paws. The dog did not bark or beg. He simply waited, as if he had given up on ever finding kindness. Something about that quiet patience touched the father too, though he tried not to show it. Are you sure? He asked his daughter gently. He may not live long. You may get your heart broken. The girl's eyes filled with tears, but they were not tears of sadness, they were tears of determination. I don't care, she whispered. I just want to give him love, even if it's only for a little while. The father looked into his daughter's eyes, and in that moment he saw her heart. She was not like the others in the crowd who laughed and judged. She was willing to give, even when nothing was promised in return. With a small smile, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a crumpled dollar bill. He placed it in her tiny hand. Go on then, he said softly. The girl's face lit up. She held the dollar tightly and walked toward the farmer. Her steps were small but steady, and though people stared and snickered, she kept her eyes on the dog. When she reached the farmer, she held out the bill. I'll take him, she said bravely. The farmer raised his eyebrows, surprised that anyone would want the animal. He shrugged and took the money. He's yours, he said flatly, as if handing over an old bucket. Then he untied the rope. The dog looked up slowly, confused by the change in hands. The girl knelt down, meeting his eyes. She didn't see sickness or weakness. She saw a friend. She reached out carefully and placed her small hand on his head. The dog flinched at first, not used to gentle touches, but then he stayed still. The girl leaned close and whispered, Don't worry. You're safe now. I'll take care of you. The dog blinked slowly, his sad eyes softening. His ears lifted just a little, as if hope had entered his heart for the first time in a long while. Behind them, the crowd muttered. Some laughed again. What a waste of money, one man sneered. That dog won't make it through the month. Another woman shook her head and said, Poor girl doesn't know what she's getting into. But the girl ignored them all. She gently took the rope, now more like a leash, and guided the dog to stand. He rose unsteadily, his legs weak but willing. The girl's father joined them, resting his hand on her shoulder. Together they began walking away from the yard, leaving behind the noise, the jokes, and the careless words. As they walked, the girl kept her hand on the dog's back, steadying him. "You're not useless," she whispered softly. "You just need someone to love you. And I will." The dog lifted his head a little higher with each step, as though the weight of his sadness was slowly lifting. The girl smiled, knowing deep inside that this was only the beginning of something special. The $1 dog, unwanted by all, had just found the one person who believed in him, and that small act of kindness would soon change everything. The road back home was long, but the girl walked happily, holding the rope that led the German Shepherd by her side. Every now and then she glanced up at the dog, who moved slowly, his paws dragging as though each step cost him great effort. Still, there was something different in his walk now. Though weak, he was no longer moving in circles tied to a post. He was walking forward with someone who cared. Her father carried a basket of vegetables from the farmer's yard sale, watching quietly as his daughter kept her attention fixed on the dog. He admired her determination. It wasn't easy to see value where others saw nothing, but she seemed to have that rare gift. He worried, of course. The dog looked old and fragile. Caring for him would not be simple, but his daughter's face glowed with such joy that he didn't want to ruin it. When they finally reached their little home, the sun was sinking behind the hills. The house was small and modest, with paint peeling on the sides and a fence that leaned slightly, but it was filled with warmth. The girl hurried inside and returned with a small bowl of water. She set it on the ground and encouraged the dog to drink. At first he sniffed suspiciously, but soon thirst won. He bent his head and lapped up the cool water eagerly, as though he had not tasted something clean in days. The girl clapped her hands lightly, her eyes shining. "See, Papa? He's thirsty. He's alive. He just needed care." Her father smiled faintly and nodded. "He does look better with a little water," he admitted. Next, the girl brought out a piece of bread. She broke it into small chunks and placed them near the dog. Slowly, he ate, his eyes lifting once in a while to study her face, as if trying to understand why this small human was being so gentle. Every time he looked at her, the girl smiled back, patient and calm. That night, the dog lay near the porch, curled in a corner. The girl brought him an old blanket, one she had once used for her dolls. She spread it on the ground and whispered, "This is yours now." The dog placed his head on it, and though his body trembled with weakness, there was comfort in his eyes. The days that followed were filled with small acts of kindness. Each morning the girl would rise early, fetch water, and place food for him. Sometimes it was leftover soup, sometimes bread, sometimes scraps of meat when her father could spare a little. She would sit beside him, her hand stroking his back slowly until he grew used to her touch. At first he flinched often, as though expecting to be hit. But the girl never raised her voice, never pushed him, never forced him to do anything. She simply waited. One afternoon she decided to give him a name. She sat cross-legged on the porch, tapping her chin thoughtfully while the dog lay nearby, his ears twitching. "I can't keep calling you dog," she said with a smile. "You're special. You need a name." She listed names out loud. Max, Buddy, Rex. None seemed to fit. Then she looked into his eyes, which held a deep sadness but also strength, and whispered, "I'll call you Brave." The dog tilted his head as though listening carefully. The girl laughed. "Yes, Brave, because even though you've suffered, you're still standing. That makes you strong." From that day, the German Shepherd was no longer nameless. He was Brave training. Brave was not easy. He didn't know simple commands. When the girl said sit, he only stared blankly. When she said come, he hesitated, afraid to move. But she never scolded him. She used small treats, claps, and cheerful words. Whenever he managed something close to the command, she praised him warmly. Slowly, Brave began to understand. He wagged his tail just a little at first, then more confidently each time. Neighbors noticed the change. When they passed by the fence, they saw Brave standing alert beside the girl instead of lying weakly on the ground. They whispered among themselves, surprised at the transformation. Some still mocked quietly, saying, "The dog won't last. He's too old." But others began to admire the girl's dedication. Her father, too, started seeing results. He noticed how Brave followed his daughter everywhere, how his ears perked up when she called, and how protective he already seemed. Once, when a stray cat leaped onto the porch, Brave barked loudly and stood in front of the girl, startling everyone. It was the first time he had shown such strength. The father raised his eyebrows. Looks like he's already guarding you, he said. The girl hugged Brave tightly around the neck. See, Papa? He's not useless. As weeks passed, Brave's body grew stronger. His fur became shinier, his steps firmer. Though still thin, he carried himself with pride now. He often ran short circles in the yard, chasing sticks the girl threw. His bark grew louder, no longer weak and broken, but clear and powerful. He stayed close to the girl, watching her every move with devoted eyes. But while Brave was learning to trust, the journey was not without struggles. One evening, when the father tried to pat Brave's head, the dog growled softly, his body stiff with fear. The father pulled back, frowning. He doesn't trust me, he said. The girl shook her head gently. He just needs more time, Papa. Maybe he was hurt before. But he'll learn. She knelt beside Brave, whispering, It's okay. He's family too. Brave's eyes softened at her voice, and slowly he relaxed. The father watched, amazed at how one small girl could calm a large dog with just words. Every day, the bond between the girl and Brave deepened. She told him stories, secrets, and dreams. She told him about school, about how she wanted to be a doctor someday to help people who were sick and weak, just like she had helped him. Brave listened quietly, his head resting on her lap, his tail thumping gently against the floor. What amazed everyone was how quickly Brave seemed to understand her feelings. When she was happy, he wagged his tail and barked playfully. When she was tired, he lay quietly beside her, his head heavy on her feet. And when she was sad, like the day her favorite book was torn by accident, he licked her hand gently as if saying, Don't cry. I'm here. It was clear to anyone who saw them that this was no ordinary bond. The little girl had given Brave a second chance at life, and in return, Brave gave her loyalty that could not be measured in dollars or gold. Still, in the background, whispers of doubt continued. Neighbors still said the girl had taken on too much. Some shook their heads when they saw her feeding Brave with food that could have been saved for herself, but the girl never listened. She believed in Brave with all her heart. And though nobody knew it yet, her decision to spend that single dollar was about to prove more valuable than anyone could ever imagine. For one day soon, Brave would show the whole town just how wrong they had been. Brave was no longer the same dog that had been tied to a post and sold for a single dollar. His body grew stronger with every passing week, and his spirit began to shine in ways no one expected. The little girl's patience had worked wonders. He now walked with his head higher. His fur had regained its healthy shine, and his tail wagged with energy whenever she called his name. To anyone watching, it was clear he had found a reason to live again. But more than his physical changes, it was his heart that had changed the most. Brave had begun to trust, and not just in small ways. He trusted the girl completely. He followed her everywhere, whether she was walking to the garden, sitting on the porch with her school books, or even helping her father carry vegetables from the small market. Brave's eyes never left her, and when she was not around, he grew restless, pacing near the door until she returned. The girl, in turn, devoted herself to him. She brushed his coat with an old comb, cleaned his paws when he came in muddy, and continued training him with gentle words. She taught him to sit, stay, and fetch. At first he struggled, confused by commands, but her laughter and encouragement made it a game. Slowly, he began to learn. He no longer trembled when she raised her hand. Instead, he eagerly awaited the treat she always carried in her pocket. One Saturday, the father took the girl and Brave to the town square. The market was full of life, with vendors shouting their prices, children running, and adults bargaining. As soon as Brave stepped into the crowded place, whispers began. People remembered the dog that had been laughed at and sold for almost nothing. Now he stood tall, muscles showing beneath his coat, his eyes bright and alert. The girl walked proudly beside him, her hand resting lightly on his back. Is that the same dog? One woman asked in disbelief. The one she bought for $1? It can't be, another muttered. Look at him now. He looks like a trained guardian. But it was the same dog, and everyone could see the difference love had made. Some were impressed, but others still doubted. A man sneered, Don't be fooled. He might look healthy, but inside he's still the same useless animal. One day he'll turn wild. The girl heard, but she didn't answer. She simply bent down, stroked Brave's ears, and whispered, Don't listen to them. I know who you are. Brave licked her hand as if to promise he would never let her down. Back home, the bond grew stronger. The girl began reading her school lessons out loud while Brave sat beside her. At first it was just a practice, but soon it became a routine. Brave seemed to listen, his ears twitching at the sound of her voice, his eyes following her lips as she spoke. Sometimes when she paused, he would bark lightly, as if telling her to continue. Her father chuckled one evening and said, "Looks like you found yourself both a pet and a study partner." But Brave was more than just a companion. He was becoming a protector. One evening, as the girl played in the yard with a ball, a group of older boys passed by on the road. They were loud, teasing each other, and one of them thought it would be funny to throw a stone toward the yard. The stone landed near the girl, making her jump. In an instant, Brave leapt forward, barking fiercely. His deep, powerful voice startled the boys, who froze in shock. They had expected an old, weak dog, not a strong guardian ready to defend his family. The boys ran, laughing nervously, but Brave did not chase them. He stood firm in front of the girl, tail stiff, ears alert, his body ready in case danger returned. The girl hugged him tightly afterward. "You really are my Brave," she whispered, her voice trembling with both fear and pride. The father had watched the entire scene from the porch. He nodded slowly, realizing that his daughter's $1 purchase had become far more valuable than anyone could have guessed. Brave was not just a pet, he was family, and he was already proving it. In the weeks that followed, Brave's reputation grew. Neighbors who once mocked began to watch with respect. They saw him sitting obediently beside the girl at the market, carrying himself with dignity. They saw him patrolling the yard at night, barking only when strangers approached. The whispers changed from laughter to quiet admiration. "That girl knew something we didn't," people began to say. "She saw what none of us could see." Still, there were moments of struggle. Brave remained cautious around adults, especially men. Whenever a stranger reached out to touch him, he stiffened, his eyes narrowing with suspicion. The girl always calmed him, stroking his fur and saying softly, "It's okay. You're safe now." Slowly, he began to relax, but the scars of his past could not be erased overnight. One day, as the girl and her father walked back from the river, they noticed Brave sniffing the air, his body tense. He pulled at the rope, growling low in his throat. The father frowned. "What's wrong with him?" he asked. The girl knelt, rubbing Brave's head. "Something's out there," she said. Just a moment later, a stray dog appeared from behind the bushes, teeth bared. It barked aggressively, ready to fight. Before anyone could move, Brave stepped forward, placing himself between the girl and the stray. His body stood firm, his fur bristling, his teeth flashing as he barked back. The stray hesitated, then ran off into the woods. Brave did not chase. He simply returned to the girl's side, licking her hand as if to say, "You're safe now." The father shook his head in amazement. "That dog would give his life for you," he said quietly. The girl smiled proudly. "Because I gave him mine first," she replied. It was true. She had given him love when he had nothing, and now he gave her everything he had in return. Their bond was not ordinary. It was built on trust, sacrifice, and loyalty that could not be broken. The girl began to dream of showing Brave to the town, not for pride, but to prove that no creature was useless if given love. She imagined one day entering him in a dog show, not for prizes, but to show everyone what kindness could achieve. Her father supported her dream, though he reminded her it would take time. Meanwhile, Brave continued to surprise them. He learned to fetch sticks perfectly, returning them and placing them gently at the girl's feet. He learned to stay by her side when she walked to school, waiting patiently outside until she returned. Teachers and children passing by noticed him, impressed by his discipline. "That's the dollar dog," they whispered. "Look at him now." The girl never tired of hearing those whispers. Each time she knelt beside Brave, hugged him and whispered, "They see you now, but I saw you first." What none of them knew was that the real test of Brave's loyalty was still to come, for soon danger would arrive in a way no one expected, and the $1 dog would show the entire town just how valuable he truly was. The sun had barely risen when the little girl stepped outside with Brave, the German shepherd walking closely by her side. The morning air was crisp and filled with the scent of grass and dew. Birds chirped in the distance and everything seemed calm. But beneath the quiet, a feeling of tension hung in the air. Brave's ears twitched constantly, his body alert and ready. The girl noticed his unusual behavior but smiled reassuringly. "It's okay, Brave," she whispered. "Nothing's wrong. We're safe here. They walked along the edge of their yard, playing with a small ball. Brave chased after it eagerly, returning it to her again and again. His energy seemed endless, and the girl laughed each time he bounded toward her, tail high and eyes sparkling. It was a joy to see how far he had come from the lonely, abandoned dog that had been sold for $1. Suddenly, a loud noise broke the morning calm. A car screeched on the nearby road, and a man stepped out in a rush. His movements were rough and hurried, and he was carrying a large bag. Brave's body stiffened immediately. He growled low in his throat, a warning that the girl had learned to trust. She stopped in her tracks, her eyes following Brave's gaze. The man approached, seemingly unaware of the dog. He was walking straight toward the little girl, his steps quick and uneven. Brave barked loudly, the sound deep and commanding, startling the man. The dog stepped forward, placing himself firmly between the girl and the stranger, his body tense, ready to defend. The girl's heart pounded. "Brave, it's okay," she whispered, trying to calm him. But the dog would not move. His growl was steady, warning the man to stop. The stranger hesitated, then laughed nervously. "It's just a dog," he said, waving his hand. "Don't get so excited." Brave did not back down. He barked again, louder this time, his teeth showing slightly. The man took a cautious step back, unsure of how to handle the dog's confidence. Brave's protective instincts had grown so strong that he would not allow anyone to come near the girl unless they were trusted. The little girl knelt slowly, keeping her eyes on Brave. She knew that he would only act if he sensed real danger. "He's just protecting me," she said softly. "He's my Brave." The man seemed to consider leaving, but just then a smaller figure appeared behind him, a child from the neighborhood, laughing and playing carelessly. The man tried to wave the child out of the way, but his attention shifted, and the bag he was carrying swung dangerously. It hit the ground, spilling its contents. Papers scattered, and something shiny rolled toward the yard. Brave reacted immediately. He lunged forward with precision, hurting the man and keeping the girl safely behind him. The dog's movements were swift and confident, his body alert to every motion. The stranger stumbled, surprised by the dog's agility, while the little girl watched in awe. Brave had become not just her companion, but her guardian. When the commotion ended, the man gathered his belongings hurriedly and left, muttering under his breath. Brave stayed close to the girl, his eyes never leaving her face. The girl knelt, hugging him tightly. "You're amazing," she whispered, tears of relief in her eyes. "You kept me safe." The incident quickly became the talk of the neighborhood. People who had doubted Brave's strength or value now spoke in awe of the dog's bravery. Neighbors came to see him, some hesitantly, others with admiration in their eyes. They saw the same dog they had once mocked, a dog bought for $1, now standing tall, alert, and confident, a true protector. The girl's father watched quietly from the porch. He had known that Brave was special, but seeing him act in real danger made him realize just how much had changed. He looked at his daughter, proud of her kindness and patience. She had seen value where others saw nothing, and in return, Brave had become a living example of loyalty and courage. In the days that followed, the girl continued to train Brave carefully. She introduced small challenges, teaching him to respond to commands quickly and accurately. She walked him around the neighborhood, letting him become comfortable with different people and sounds. Brave remained protective but also disciplined. He learned to differentiate between real threats and harmless situations, his instincts sharp but controlled. One afternoon, as the girl practiced throwing a ball for him in the yard, a car stopped at the gate. Two men stepped out, unfamiliar and tall, looking around as if they were searching for someone. Brave immediately sensed unease. He positioned himself between the girl and the strangers, low to the ground but tense, growling softly. The girl reached down and placed her hand on his head. "It's okay, Brave. Stay calm. Watch, but don't attack," she whispered. The strangers noticed the dog and hesitated, realizing that the little girl had not been exaggerating. Brave was large, strong, and alert. His presence alone made them wary. They exchanged glances and decided to leave quietly, walking back to their car without a word. Brave did not move until the car disappeared from sight, ensuring that the girl remained safe. The girl hugged him afterward, whispering, "You're more than anyone expected." "You're my Brave." Brave responded with a soft lick, as if understanding the words completely. He was no longer the abandoned, broken dog of the past. He had become a hero in his own right, a guardian who had earned the trust and love of his human. News of Brave's bravery began to spread through the town. Children told their friends about the dog who protected the girl. Adults mentioned him in hushed, admiring tones. Even the farmer who had sold him for $1 heard the story and smiled to himself, realizing that he had unknowingly passed a treasure into the hands of someone who truly cared. The girl felt proud, but she also knew that Brave's courage was not just about his strength. It was about the bond they shared, built on trust, patience, and love. She had given him care when no one else would, and he had responded with loyalty beyond measure. Together, they had faced danger and emerged stronger. Brave's reputation grew further when the local school invited the girl to bring him for a demonstration. She showed how obedient and protective he was, allowing the children to see his commands and how he responded to situations calmly and safely. Everyone watched in amazement as the dog, once abandoned and mocked, performed flawlessly. The little girl spoke about how she had cared for him, how love and patience had transformed a lonely, neglected animal into a brave, loyal companion. Her words struck a chord with the community. People began to understand that value was not determined by wealth, appearances, or what others thought. True value could be found in kindness, care, and dedication. Brave had become the living proof of that lesson. Evenings at home were quieter but filled with a different kind of excitement. Brave would lie at the girl's feet while she did her homework, occasionally looking up at her with attentive eyes. The father would often sit nearby, watching the bond that had grown between them. He marveled at how one small act, $1, a choice, a kind heart, had created something extraordinary. Though the girl and Brave had faced danger and uncertainty, they had emerged stronger, more confident, and deeply connected. They were partners in every sense. She was his protector, his trainer and his friend, and he was her guardian, her companion, and her hero. And while the town had begun to recognize Brave's worth, the true story of his loyalty and bravery was only just beginning. For soon a challenge would appear that would test both the girl and Brave in ways no one could predict, and their bond would shine brighter than ever. The days passed, and the little girl and Brave continued their life together, growing closer with every moment. Brave had become more than just a pet. He was her protector, her companion, and her friend. His courage and loyalty were evident in everything he did, and the girl took pride in how far he had come from the lonely, abandoned dog that had been sold for $1. One bright morning, the girl decided to take Brave for a walk beyond the yard. The town was just waking up and the streets were quiet. Brave walked beside her, alert and watchful, ears twitching at every sound. The girl felt safe knowing that Brave would not let anything happen to her. People passing by recognized them and smiled. They had heard of Brave's bravery and admired the bond between the girl and the dog. As they approached the edge of the neighborhood, a sudden sound made Brave stop. He crouched slightly, his body stiff and his ears perked. The girl noticed his tension. "What is it, Brave?" she whispered. He barked sharply and moved closer to her, nudging her with his nose. The girl's heart raced. Something was wrong. Just ahead, a small child had wandered too close to the busy road. The child, unaware of the danger, was about to step into traffic when Brave reacted instantly. With speed that surprised even the girl, he dashed forward, positioning himself between the child and the oncoming cars. His bark rang loudly, demanding attention. The child froze, startled by the sudden presence of the large dog. Drivers slowed as they saw the brave German shepherd in the street, and the child stepped back safely onto the sidewalk. The girl ran forward, hugging Brave tightly. "You saved him," she exclaimed, tears of relief in her eyes. Brave wagged his tail and licked her face as if proud of what he had done. The townspeople who witnessed the scene gasped and murmured among themselves. They had seen Brave protect the girl before, but now he had saved another life. The dog they had once mocked for being abandoned and weak had become a true hero. Word of Brave's act spread quickly. Neighbors, teachers, and even the local shopkeepers praised the little girl for raising such a loyal and brave dog. The story made its way to the local newspaper, which ran a small article titled, "The Dollar Dog Who Saved a Life." Photographs showed Brave standing proudly beside the girl, his fur shiny and eyes alert, and everyone who read it felt a sense of admiration for both the dog and the child. Despite all the attention, the girl remained humble. She knew that Brave's courage was not something he had learned overnight. It was the result of love, patience, and trust. She spent hours each day training him, caring for him and showing him kindness, and in return, he gave his heart fully, ready to protect and serve her whenever needed. The girl's father watched proudly as his daughter and Brave became local heroes. He remembered the day they had brought Brave home, bought for $1 and marveled at how far they had come. "You did a wonderful thing, sweetheart," he told her one evening. "You saw value when no one else could, and in return, Brave has shown everyone what true loyalty and courage look like." Brave, of course, didn't care about fame or recognition. He only cared about the girl. Every morning he greeted her with excitement, wagging his tail and nudging her hand for pets. Every evening he lay at her feet, watching over her as she completed her homework or read a book. Their connection was unbreakable, built on trust and mutual respect. One afternoon, a group of children approached the yard, curious to meet the dog they had only heard about in whispers and stories. The girl welcomed them, introducing Brave carefully. She allowed them to pet him while explaining how she had rescued him and how patience and love had transformed him into the brave dog he had become. The children listened, eyes wide, amazed by the story. They began to understand that even creatures who seemed small, weak, or abandoned could be strong and valuable if treated with care. Brave's life continued to improve. He gained weight, his coat became thicker and healthier, and his steps were confident and proud. The girl and her father made sure he had a comfortable bed, plenty of food, and regular walks. Every challenge he faced, whether learning a new command or meeting strangers, became an opportunity for him to show his intelligence and bravery. Then one day, a local organization for animals invited the girl to share her story at a community event. She spoke about how Brave had been abandoned, how he had been sold for $1, and how their bond had grown through love and care. She described how Brave had saved the child from the road, emphasizing that true courage often comes from those who have been given a second chance. Brave sat quietly beside her, alert and calm, as the audience listened in awe. Many were moved to tears by the story, realizing that kindness and patience could create heroes in the most unexpected places. After the event, several families came forward, asking the girl for advice on how to care for their pets, particularly dogs who had been abandoned or mistreated. She shared her experiences willingly, hoping that others could learn the lessons she had learned with Brave, that love, patience, and trust could transform even the loneliest of animals into loyal companions. As the weeks turned into months, Brave's bond with the girl grew even deeper. He no longer flinched around strangers but remained vigilant, always aware of his surroundings. He learned to play safely with children, respond to commands instantly, and even help the girl carry small items from one place to another. His bravery was now matched by intelligence and calm, making him not just a protector but a true friend. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills, the girl sat with Brave on the porch, watching the sky turn golden. She wrapped her arms around his neck and whispered, "You're my Brave, my hero. I'm so glad I found you." Brave rested his head on her lap, eyes soft, tail wagging slowly. It was a quiet moment, filled with the peace and happiness that only comes from knowing you are truly loved and valued. The story of the dollar dog became a legend in the town. People who had once laughed at the girl and her decision now told the tale to their children, emphasizing the importance of kindness, compassion, and seeing the value in everyone, even in a dog that had been abandoned and forgotten. Brave's life had changed forever, not because of wealth or status, but because one small girl had seen potential where others saw nothing. Years later, the girl would look back on that moment, the day she spent $1 to save a lonely dog, and realize that it had changed both their lives forever. Brave had taught her lessons about loyalty, courage, and love that she would carry with her always. And Brave, in return, had found a home, a family, and a purpose that he would never have known otherwise. The dollar dog who had been abandoned had become a hero, a protector, and a friend. The little girl who had given him a chance had shown the town and the world that true value is never measured by money, appearances, or what others say. It is measured by the heart, the care, and the love that we give, and by the bonds we create that can never be broken. Brave looked up at her one last time that evening, his eyes shining with trust and loyalty. The girl smiled back. Together they had faced fear, danger, and doubt. Together they had proven that even the smallest act of kindness could create a hero. And together they would face whatever life brought next, knowing that the greatest adventures and the deepest joys came from love, patience, and believing in each other.